So here's the deal. My life got totally messed up thanks to my own sister, who decided to team up with my ex-wife to make me pay child support for a kid that's not even mine. Yeah, it's that bad. Honestly, I'll admit it. I can't stand my sister now, even though it wasn't always this way. She's my older sister, and I used to look up to her a lot when we were kids. But man, how times have changed. I was married to Susie for 2 years before I uncovered the bombshell that she was cheating on me. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I was just scrolling through her messages when I stumbled upon a conversation where she was sexting with her guy best friend of 8 years. She always insisted he was just a friend, someone who'd been in her life forever. Sure, I got a little jealous now and then, but I really trusted her. Then, boom! I see those explicit texts, and it's like my whole world just crumbled. I confronted Susie right away, and she broke down, apologizing like crazy. She swore it was a one-time thing and promised to cut him out of her life. Against my better judgment, I decided to believe her. We even started going to marriage counseling to try and fix things because I still loved her and wanted to believe that people can change and relationships can heal. For a while, it seemed like we were making progress. Susie was doing all the right things to regain my trust. But, surprise, surprise, it was all a giant mistake. One evening, she told me she was going out with a coworker. Something felt off, so I decided to call that coworker. They had no plans with Susie that night. My heart sank as I realized she was probably meeting up with her so-called best friend again. I tried calling Susie multiple times, but she ignored every call. My anxiety was through the roof as I waited for her to come home. When she finally did, she was completely wasted and didn't even acknowledge me. She just stumbled to the bedroom and passed out. I was furious and heartbroken. Later, I noticed her phone buzz with a message. Curiosity got the best of me, and I checked it. It was from him, saying, "That was so much fun, we should do this more often," followed by some suggestive emojis. That was the gut punch I was dreading. I felt physically sick, knowing my worst fears had come true. The next morning, I confronted Susie, and she tried to pin it all on me, saying I was the paranoid one and invading her privacy. But I wasn't having any of it. I demanded an explanation for the message. She brushed it off, saying that's just how friends talk. Yeah, right. I told her I'd go straight to him for answers if she didn't come clean. That finally got her to crack. She admitted they'd made out after getting drunk and tried to justify it by saying our marriage had become boring. I called her out, saying her cheating was the reason our marriage was falling apart. In the end, I realized there was no fixing this. Susie's betrayal was too deep, and I couldn't see a way back. And to top it all off, my sister decided to side with Susie, making things even worse for me. So yeah, life's been pretty rough thanks to them. I finally hit my breaking point. I couldn't just pretend that everything was fine after what Susie did. She realized how serious things had gotten and started begging for forgiveness. She admitted she had issues, but begged me not to leave her, promising she'd work on herself and our relationship. Even though she made those promises, I knew deep down that the trust between us was shattered beyond repair. Staying together would only drag out the inevitable disaster. Her betrayal created a rift we just couldn't fix, and our marriage was beyond saving. So, I had to make the hardest decision of my life. I asked her to move out. Luckily, we had a prenup, so I was somewhat relieved that I wouldn't face any financial backlash during the divorce. Despite her desperate attempts and even getting her friends to plead with me, I stood firm. I kicked her out. It might sound harsh, but the pain was unbearable. I'd always thought we'd grow old together, but her betrayal changed everything, and I knew I'd never be the same. I confided in my parents and my older sister, about what happened. They were shocked and disappointed, as no one expected Susie's actions. They assured me of their support, which was comforting. But Na was unusually quiet, which struck me as odd. When I asked for her thoughts, she surprised me. Instead of acknowledging my betrayal, she questioned whether I was sure about the divorce, pointing out that Susie didn't have family support. I was stunned. It seemed like she cared more about Susie's well-being than my own emotional turmoil. I firmly told Na that I didn't care about Susie's support system. She had betrayed me repeatedly. I emphasized that Susie's well-being wasn't my concern anymore, and questioned why she seemed more worried about Susie than about me, her own brother. Na explained that she was just worried about me and didn't want me to make any hasty decisions. She always thought Susie and I were meant for each other and was still in shock about the divorce. She just wanted to make sure I wouldn't regret it later. While her response was strange, I didn't dwell on it too much. The situation was already emotionally draining, and I needed to focus on getting through the divorce. Things seemed to be going smoothly during the divorce proceedings, and my lawyer was confident we'd win. But then, everything changed. Susie dropped a bombshell. She was pregnant. I was blindsided. I never saw it coming. Life, it seemed, had more pain in store for me. Susie and her lawyer urged me to halt the divorce, arguing that we should work things out for our child's sake. Susie insisted she wanted to give our child a traditional family life. I was taken aback and responded that I didn't care about her wishes anymore. There was no way this child could be mine. Susie argued back that she hadn't been intimate with anyone else, only making out with her male best friend once. She urged me to consider what was best for our child, but I saw it as a desperate attempt to derail the divorce and guilt-trip me into staying so she could continue living a lavish life on my dime. I stood firm, insisting the divorce would proceed as planned. I said that after she gave birth, we'd do a paternity test to determine if the child was mine. Susie's lawyer countered, saying that since Susie was still legally married to me and claimed she hadn't been with anyone else, it automatically made me the father. They said they'd seek child support from me. My lawyer disagreed, pointing out that without a paternity test, their claims were baseless. But we all know our legal system has its flaws, especially in cases like these. In the following weeks, Susie's lawyer sued me for child support, presenting evidence that Susie hadn't been with anyone else. They painted me as a controlling freak trying to dodge child support. They even brought in witnesses to back Susie's story. To my shock, one of the witnesses was my sister, Na. I assumed she was there to support me, but she testified against me. She said she'd been friends with Susie for a long time and was certain Susie couldn't have betrayed me. Na believed the child was mine. Hearing my sister support my ex-wife over me was heartbreaking. Na knew how much I loved Susie and how deeply she had hurt me, yet she sided with Susie. After court, I confronted Na, feeling utterly betrayed. Na stood by her decision, insisting she was doing what she thought was right and that I'd appreciate it in the future. I was furious and disgusted, telling her she'd put me in a position where I might have to pay child support for a child whose paternity wasn't confirmed. Na argued that I shouldn't be so cruel to an unborn child. So, I was told that I really needed to think about the financial mess Susie would be in if she didn't get any alimony or child support from me. Nina, my sister, said I'd never get where Susie was coming from because I don't have that maternal instinct that women do. She pushed me to see that covering the kids' expenses was the least I could do. But honestly, I felt used and totally disturbed by Nina's view on this. I couldn't wrap my head around how she could care more about Susie's financial situation than the emotional chaos I was drowning in. My parents were also pretty upset with Nina. They told her she had no right to go behind my back and testify against me. But the damage was already done. Nina testifying against me made the court think Susie might be right and that I was trying to dodge my responsibilities. So, the court sided with my ex and ordered me to pay child support until the kid turned 18. I was furious and couldn't accept the judgment, but my lawyer and I hit a brick wall trying to change the court's decision. It's been quite some time since my divorce from Susie, and I've been paying child support every month for a kid who doesn't even look like me. Even a paternity test confirmed he's not mine, but because Susie was pregnant while we were still married, the law says the kid is my responsibility, so I'm stuck paying until he's 18. This whole ordeal has made me resent Nina more than Susie. I blame Nina for trapping me in this mess, so I've been giving her the cold shoulder and avoiding her at family events, despite my parents begging me to forgive her. Most of the family gets where I'm coming from and supports my decision. Some cousins and relatives are also keeping their distance from Nina. Nina's tried to complain to our parents about how I've isolated her from the family. She argues that she did what she thought was best for the child, but no one's buying it. The family knows she messed up and they're on my side. She got married last year to her longtime boyfriend, Joshua. Even though I got an invite, I didn't bother showing up. Turns out, a lot of other family members didn't either, which really bummed Nina out. Recently, I had to travel to a nearby town for a work conference. After the conference, some coworkers and I decided to chill at the hotel bar. Imagine my shock when I saw Nina there with an older guy. She didn't see me, so I stayed incognito, curious about why she was out late at night with some dude, considering she's married. They were flirting and seemed super cozy with each other. Without thinking, I took a few pictures of them, making sure to get clear shots of Nina and the guy. I couldn't believe my eyes as I watched them share smiles and laughter. After about an hour, the guy signaled for Nina to follow him to his room, and she did. I was stunned. My sister, who's married, was about to cheat on her husband right before my eyes. When I got home, I decided to reach out to her husband, Joshua. He needed to know the truth. I found him on Facebook and sent a friend request. When he accepted, I messaged him, explaining that I was Nina's brother and we needed to talk. I asked him not to tell Nina about our conversation and gave him my phone number. He called me a few minutes later, curious about why I'd reached out. I apologized for not attending their wedding and regretted that we were talking under such crappy circumstances. He asked what was going on, and I told him what I had seen at the hotel. I didn't outright accuse Nina of cheating, because who knows, maybe they have an open marriage. But as I detailed the events, Joshua got more and more distressed, asking tons of questions about what Nina was wearing and who the guy was. To back up my story, I sent him the pictures I took. He was clearly shaken and grappling with what this meant. After a pause, he thanked me for my honesty and asked why I'd go out of my way to help him, especially since I had no relationship with Nina anymore. His question hit home, so I shared my own story about my ex-wife cheating on me and how awful it had been. As I went into the nitty-gritty of my situation, I explained how my sister, Nina, totally screwed me over by testifying against me. Thanks to her, I'm stuck paying child support for a kid who isn't even mine. Joshua stayed silent for a bit after hearing what I had to say. Then he told me that Nina had fed him a completely different story. According to her, my marriage with Susie was already on the rocks, and we had stopped being intimate. She claimed that Susie just made a one-time mistake, which supposedly caused our split. Hearing Nina's twisted version of events made my blood boil. I set the record straight for Joshua, telling him that Susie didn't just cheat once, she did it twice, and with the same guy who was supposed to be just a friend. I wanted Joshua to see that our divorce wasn't simply about a one-off mistake, it was about repeated betrayals. To my relief, Joshua believed me. He thanked me for being honest and showing him Nina's deceitful ways. He told me he wouldn't stay with a cheating partner either, and that he was planning to talk things over with Nina soon. In the days after our chat, my parents started bombarding me with calls, blaming me for ruining Nina's life just because she was now facing a divorce. They were mad that I interfered in her marriage and upset that they might not get a grandkid from her. I didn't hold back, though. I told them it wasn't my fault Nina couldn't stay faithful, and that instead of dreaming about grandkids, they should teach her some better morals. Nina herself sent me a nasty text, calling me a spiteful little boy who couldn't mind his own business. She even suggested that Susie cheating on me was somehow my fault. Her message made me so angry I couldn't calm down for hours. But then, karma came into play. Nina got pregnant. She claims Joshua is the father, but he's not buying it and reached out to me for help. He wants me to testify for him in court, showing the photos I took of Nina with another guy. I agreed without hesitation, not just out of revenge, but because I empathize with Joshua. I don't want him to go through the same heartache I did. Since then, Nina and my parents have been all over me, urging me not to testify, saying family should come first. I can't help but find it ironic, given that Nina didn't care about family when she testified against me. I'm committed to teaching her a lesson and making sure Joshua doesn't suffer like I did. Update 1. I'm shocked at how divided people are about my story. Some women are actually trying to convince me to side with my sister, despite her infidelity. To them, I say, shame on you. I would have had no problem paying child support if Susie had proven the child was mine, but she knew it wasn't. Yet she still made me liable because she couldn't afford it alone. I couldn't prove she was intimate with the other guy beyond one text I found. I hate Nina for screwing me over and testifying for Susie. Now that she's manipulating her husband in the same way, I can't stand by it. I'm going to testify against her to make sure Joshua doesn't face the same fate. If it turns out the child is his, I'm sure he'll step up. Because he seems like a decent guy. But until then, why should he be forced to pay for a child that isn't his, especially when Nina hasn't shown any remorse for her affair or ruining her marriage? Unlike my marriage, Joshua and Nina don't have a prenup, so he might also have to pay alimony. On top of that, he shouldn't have to pay child support for a kid that isn't his. Most people agree with my decision. Update 2. Today I testified against Nina in court. I shared everything I had seen her doing with the other guy, presenting all the evidence and photos. Nina glared at me the entire time, but I stood my ground. Her lawyer tried to discredit me by saying I had a grudge, but the judge accepted my testimony. I hope my actions help Joshua's case, so he won't be forced to pay child support. In the middle of all this, my relationship with my parents has taken a hit. My mom called, crying, after finding out I testified against Nina. She said she and Dad were hoping I wouldn't do it. I was frustrated and reminded her that they never fought for me with the same intensity when Nina testified against me. They even forgave her for everything she did. It felt like a betrayal, so I told her that if they were going to prioritize Nina over me, then I didn't need them in my life. Since then, I've stopped talking to my parents and ignoring their calls and messages. Update 3. I've got some news. Joshua was cleared of paying any child support to Nina. I'm sure she's upset, but I can't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing that at least one person avoided the unjust burden I had to endure. To clarify a few things people keep asking about, no, I don't have a relationship with Susie's son, even though I still pay child support. If he ever reaches out when he's older, I'll tell him the truth about his mom. Yes, my parents and I are still not talking, and honestly, I feel much lighter and more relaxed without their constant accusations about not supporting Nina. Nina won't confront me because she's still embarrassed after my testimony. Yes, she will get alimony from Joshua, which we expected. No, my parents don't have a relationship with Susie's son, since they know he isn't my child. I have no idea if they'll accept Nina's child, but maybe they will.